About 10 teachers representing the political action wing of AEA questioned incumbent Representative Thomas Reed and his challenger George Clay, but reporters weren't allowed in the room. One of them passed the A vote test, but the group won't say who until qualifying ends Friday. Both men had expected an endorsement tonight.
Just how important it is, I really couldn't say.
And if you don't get the endorsement tonight, would you fold your tent and go home?
No, I'm going to win anyway.
But political veteran Reed says he knows how important the endorsement can be.
I would hate to be a candidate without the A vote endorsement. I just don't think that I could win.
Reed had education backing last time around. AEA member James Carter says Reed's record the last 4 years still looks good to educators.
Educational issues. I wouldn't say that he has an edge, but he is looked upon favorably at this point.
Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
This isn't the first time Eastern has stopped payments on a lease that runs through 1983, and this isn't the first time the airport authority has filed suit to get the rent payment started again. Eastern stopped passenger service to Montgomery in 1980 and told the authority that the lease was broken, but the authority went to court and the airline resumed payments. Later, Eastern quit paying rent again, but started back when the airport authority talked of going to court again. Fred Enslin, a member of the Montgomery Airport Authority Board, says no rent has been received from Eastern since January.
And they're again saying that they can get out of the lease under the original terms since they're no longer doing business in Montgomery. They're also making an allegation that when we went back and leased a portion of their space to Atlantic Southeast, that we terminated their lease. So they're saying we're at fault in that aspect. We do not feel like we were because they wrote us a letter saying they had no more interest in the Montgomery Airport.
Enslin says Eastern owes about $9,000 in back rent. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
The investigator told board members that the file didn't adequately describe the mutilation of Charlotte Parks, but he also admitted that he couldn't find any evidence that Ellard threatened Nancy Kahn since going to jail. That alleged threat is one reason Attorney General Charles Graddick says Ellard should not have been paroled. He says the board didn't know about the threats or Ellard's activities during escapes from prison. And Graddick says this new information should convince the board they made a mistake in granting Ellard's parole. Ellard has been in Kilby Prison since May. He was sent back to Alabama from Georgia, where he was serving a life sentence for the murder of another woman. Is there no validity to the claim that the parole could be rescinded if, in fact, the parole board didn't have some type of complete information?
Well, the truth of the matter is, and everybody should know it by now, that the parole board had very thorough information about the criminal history, such as it was of Mr. Ellard, and about his life in general at the time they made the decision. The parole board members have testified that you could obviously always find out something else about somebody if you send a skilled investigator out for 8 days working full time, as they said, to come up with anything he could find. And the interesting thing to me is that they found so little. Doesn't amount to a hill of beans anyway.
Nancy Kahn says she wanted to testify at the hearing but didn't. She says it would have been hard to sit next to Ellard and tell her story. She says she backs the Attorney General and hopes the board will rescind Ellard's parole. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News at Kilby Prison.
And we got curious and went over to look at the house, and we noticed the house was on fire.
7-2 Chicago. Jack Gregory, NBC News.
Do you ever get tired of the race going all these different places?
Yes.
Say, I want to settle down.
Well, every now and then my health takes a little nosedive once in a while. I get overtired. Then I find that I can be so tired, and I can just pray, and I say, now, Lord, I really am very tired, and I don't believe that I can do this unless you do it. And it's amazing. I mean, the surge of energy. Some people would say, well, that's adrenaline that your mind calls on. But I prefer to believe that it's His Spirit, and it carries me through. And I always feel refreshed when I finish, in body and spirit.
I have the legal education and training, the experience in which you can place your trust, the ability to make you an effective and capable probate judge. From the deepest part of my heart, I'm really grateful an effective and capable probate judge. To this end, I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the judge of probate to the best of my ability.
You elected me to complete a job in 4 years. Not 5 years, not 8 years, but 4 years. Therefore, I will not seek the Democratic nomination or the Republican nomination for governor of Alabama. For the remainder of my term, I pledge to you my best in every effort to finish the job on time, 100%. And every one of you, I want to personally thank you for allowing me to serve as your governor. I want to thank you for your patience and your kindness, your support. Thank you again. God bless you. I believe we have questions from the press at this time.
Governor James, my name is Chris Grimshaw with Channel 12 here in Montgomery. I'm particularly interested in when you made...
When I made the decision to run for governor 6 years ago, I made the decision to run for governor for one term. There's never been any thought from that point.
Governor Bessie Ford, UPI. I know that you trust the...
And it's harder now than ever before. Our families. It's where we teach our children to worship and to appreciate Alabama and America. Educational system do they want? Very simple. They want one with quality teachers teaching the quality, whether or not we're going to be able to keep our accreditation for our grade schools. Now, let me say this. All over Montgomery, the residential areas are being burglarized. It's not easy being a state senator. And I'm given courage when I face these tasks. When I will qualify for a full 4-year term as the state senator serving District 27. First, let me emphasize that although I'm running for re-election, I am...
When the governor arrived at the studios this afternoon, the odds on his political future were still a 50-50 guess. But within a short while, the governor answered what might be considered one of the most popular questions in recent months.
You elected me to complete a job in 4 years. Not 5 years, not 8 years, but 4 years. Therefore, I will not seek the Democratic nomination or the Republican nomination.
The governor said his immediate future after office would take him back to work and to Gulf Shores, but he didn't narrow his future down any further. The governor said he would stay out of other gubernatorial campaigns unless they drag him in through name-calling.
If some of the boys come out of the playing field down there and come up in the grandstand and slap me across the cheek, I'm going to knock them right back down on that playing field.
Prefacing his announcement, the governor listed what he considered his major accomplishments, which he later prioritized to reporters.
But literacy has got to stand at the top. Opening government has got to stand at the top. And I believe that integrity.
The governor says reform issues have not been brought to government in recent years, and although he may leave office with some of his reforms incomplete, like on earmarking and constitutional reform, he says the last 6 months of his term will be spent fighting for recent reform measures, retirement reform, and revision of some criminal laws.
I will keep them before the people in this election year. It would be wrong for me to work 3.5 years as your governor and fail to do everything in my power to see that you know the truth on issues that will affect you, your children, and your grandchildren.
And the governor says he ends his 4 years as governor with no gripes.
I've enjoyed every minute of this job. Thus
Chris
giving the
Grimshaw,
American people an
WSFA
interest rate
TV
they
News.
can afford, and that means a prime rate of 6%.
How much are 2 cups? $1. He does.
They've come from all across the state to sell their homemade, homegrown goods. Fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, arts and crafts, some fresh too, made out of fresh wood. Well, the farmers say this has been a pretty good year to plant, grow, harvest, and sell. Not too hot, the rains came just in time before the produce turned yellow and pale. Corn this year is about $1 a dozen, plums $1 for 2 pounds. From $2 to $3.50 is the going price for the red, ripe, juicy fruit of round. And by the way, one farmer says his watermelons are the best in town.
And you said you got some red, ripe, juicy watermelons?
Oh, yeah. I guarantee mine, anyway.
Tell us about your watermelon.
Well, I think this is about the best crop of watermelon I had in about 2 years now on watermelon. And back of business in most everything. It came out fine this time. I believe I planted it in the right time.
Purple whole peas, $8 a bushel. Farmers say they had to raise the price just a bit. It costs more, they say, to home grow their goods, and they have to make a profit. Down the sidewalk are handmade goods like dolls, stained glass, and paintings on wood. Flower arrangements, always a thoughtful gift made with rat tails and bunny tails too, in a variety of colors, orange, natural, and blue. All the goods homegrown and homemade, for some are the best buys around. Shoppers look forward to the annual event when the farmers market comes to town. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
The other part of it is, of course, the attorney's fees
by the county commission in any respect.
At point two, would we go out there Thursday, whatever the date is, they put a gate?
I just think to have them around, probably. Somebody that they have, somebody will try to use them.
One other thing, and I'm also very concerned as far as the military district. And until we can get the farmers of this district back on their feet, Republicans and Democrats alike, let's stop fighting and fussing, and let's stop blaming one another for what's going on. There's another very important reason why I'm running for Congress. It is this: I have simply grown tired of politicians who one day say one thing and the next day they say something else. And you can never depend on them. You never can put your finger on them. And as soon as a difficult situation comes along, well, they turn tail and run.
law enforcement officers in this county. I think I can. I think the turnover is indicated at this time because the courts, although the criminal laws have been updated and improved, the courts are still quite lenient, especially in criminal matters. And in being lenient, they impede the effectiveness of the law enforcement officers in this county. Public, and it should be conducted for the public's benefit rather than the individual.
Thomas says he's had a delightful time during his short campaign for the governor's office, but he says the support he needed wasn't there.
We're going to maintain our interest in state government. We have been a shade tree student of state government for 30 years, and we intend to maintain that interest. I expect to be interested in state government during Mr. McCorkadale's term as governor.
Thomas says he's endorsing McCorkadale, but they haven't made any deals about a future job for Thomas. Thomas says he and McCorkadale had nearly identical plans for their administrations.
We've been to a number of candidate forums together, and I have thought many times that what he has been saying and what he has been endorsing and proposing are the very items that strike near to my heart.
McCorkadale says Thomas's support will strengthen what he considers a good, strong second position in the Democratic field. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
And those ideas that we have as far as jobs.
Joe?
Thomas says he's supporting McCorkadale because their plans for administrations were nearly identical. Thomas says he had a delightful time in his short campaign for governor, but he says the money and support he needed just weren't there. McCorkadale says when he heard Thomas making speeches, they sounded almost like his own. McCorkadale says Thomas's support will strengthen what he already considers a good, strong second position in the Democratic field behind George Wallace, who he thinks is in first place. Thomas says even though he's swinging his support to McCorkadale, that doesn't mean the two have discussed the possibility of a state job for Thomas. Thomas says if McCorkadale is elected, he'll assist him in government where appropriate, but Thomas says at this point in time, he's not really interested in a state-paid job. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
We've been to a number of candidate forums together.
At today's commission meeting, County Attorney Knox Argo said the recent judgment by federal judge Myron Thompson orders the county to award back pay to the 4 women who won the suit. The amount, he says, will have to be figured out and submitted to the court. The county has also been ordered to hire 2 of the women as probate clerks, but the county administrator says all positions in the probate office are filled. Even though the commission was absolved of any wrongdoing, Commissioner John Knight is concerned with coming up with the money necessary to pay the expenses of the suit.
What I'd like for you to do is look over this budget.
Sure.
And areas like travel, where we don't have fixed costs, where we can make some decisions on it. I'm going to have a motion to cut back.
Knight also says he plans to get with Commissioner Bill Joseph to revise the county's policies on hiring. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
For declaratory judgment.
I've pretty well knew when I came to work with him that he was going to serve 4 years and that was going to be it. We had talked about it way back in the campaign, back when he was campaigning before.
He has been true to his word, and this is what he said. I expected this of him.
To say that you want to see him run again, we certainly want what he wants, and the people of Alabama will miss him greatly, I think.
I think that some of the things that are not yet completed will be completed in years to come because of his initiative and his effort.
The oil and gas program, even though he likes to downplay its importance, I think that more than anything else affected the way people feel about him and the administration.
In this particular area, I have 15 years experience in the practice of law here in Montgomery. I think I'm qualified. I was out of town at the time, and I don't plating people in office until they, where there's abuse or sexual abuse. Far too many of these offenders are released with a fine or some other minimum punishment, and I would be inclined to use my discretion.
Like the swallows returning to Capistrano, the cattle egret have returned to Millbrook for the third year in a row. And like the swallows, they came in numbers, hundreds, thousands, or hundreds of thousands. No one knows just how many of the birds there are nesting in a patch of woods in a residential section of Millbrook. The return of the egrets is in itself not bad. The birds eat harmful insects. That's good. But what they do after they eat may not be so good. The birds' droppings can fertilize a fungus found in topsoil, and under the right conditions, this fungus can give humans a respiratory ailment called histoplasmosis. An epidemiologist for the Alabama Department of Public Health, Wallace Birch, says when people inhale dust containing spores of the fungus, they can contract histoplasmosis.
The majority of the people that we've encountered have had no symptoms whatsoever. It varies from that to an acute, mild respiratory infection similar to the common cold or flu, and can proceed from there to a chronic form of respiratory infection.
Birch says the problem can occur anywhere there is fertilization of the fungus. Earlier this year, there was an outbreak of histoplasmosis in Tuscaloosa. So why not just get rid of the birds? Well, for one thing, they and their nest are protected by federal law. And even though the birds will move if the trees are cut down in their nesting area, that's not necessarily a solution. 3 years ago, Millbrook officials cut down the trees the birds were in. The new nesting site is less than a quarter-mile away. It is important to note there has not been an increase in the number of cases of histoplasmosis in Millbrook. The birds are only a potential health hazard. That doesn't save them from being, at least to some Millbrook residents, just a plain nuisance. Reporting from Millbrook, Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
In a half hour, we'll be originating a special Governor's News Conference, which reportedly will deal with the future direction of the Fob James administration. Capitol Hill reporter Chris Grimshaw is standing by in Studio A here at TV 12 for this live report. Chris, what can we expect?
Bob, we can expect the governor to tell us whether or not he intends to seek another term for governor here in the state of Alabama. He has decided to make his speech from our studios, and there have been seating arrangements made for about 40 members of his cabinet and staff members and about an equal number of media representatives. The speech is expected to end what has perhaps been one of the most popular guessing games in the state of Alabama during the past several months. The guessing games have been going on for about 6 months, and the governor has been doing a fairly successful job of evading the question of whether or not he intends to seek another term, saying that he just has not given the matter any particular thought. There are political observers, though, that say there is some political reality to not letting it be known what his intentions are, particularly if he is planning on not running again, because making those intentions known would lessen his leverage and his effectiveness in running the office. During the past several months, though, while campaigning for his governmental reform issues, the governor has successfully left the door open for the possibility that he might seek another term in office. He's done that by campaigning statewide, accepting the campaign application forms from the state Democratic Party, and by also raising what could be considered some rather effective campaign platform issues. The governor has been going on for quite some time with this particular charade of keeping the guessing game open, and there is still, however, the statement the governor made about 4 years ago that a governor should not succeed himself, but there isn't anyone who at this point has said they have the answer of what the governor intends to do. Even among his closest staff members, there seems to be a genuine ignorance about the governor's political plans, and so we'll find out what his intentions are in a little while. The governor spent a long 4th of July holiday weekend at Gulf Shores where he reportedly pondered this particular issue, and he has reportedly written this speech himself, not sharing its contents with any of most of the members of his staff except for those extremely close to him and those necessary in getting the speech ready for tonight. So in about 25 minutes, we'll find out what the governor's political intentions are. Bob?
Thanks very much. Chris Grimshaw in our Studio A preparing for the governor's news conference.
Campaign, and I'm just going to say what I would do, and you'll have to ask other people about that, but I'm going to run a... I am concerned about our community, and I want to be responsible and responsive in a position that is important in this community, and that is district judge. And I will make these 3 promises to the people of this community. First, I will work hard to be a good district judge and to carry out my duties. Second, I will treat each and every person who comes into my courtroom, whether they be witness or...
We cannot afford this in Dallas County. Some parts of the state, you call it a recession. When it's happening to us in Dallas County, we call it... There's no other reason to push it up 1 year other than money. Bring money. Money for the Department of Revenue, state of Alabama, or wherever. The Department of Revenue is the one that asked for this.
Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America. Or I'll tell you how. If we lose that awareness, we lose that specialness and become just another man with a badge and a gun. Each of us must assure the people of this state that we will continue our professional and personal lives to merit the special place given us by the people of the state of Alabama. Which is a diversified division in this department, but it's...
President Reagan declared the 9th of July as POW MIA Recognition Day to pay tribute to American servicemen who gave up their freedom and their families in the service of their country. Ceremonies were held at the VA Hospital, Maxwell Air Force Base, and Gunner Air Force Station. All included large doses of patriotism, inspirational speeches, and some old war stories. One of those in the crowd during the celebrations was retired Air Force Colonel Clyde Bradley, a POW during World War II. Bradley, who was shot down during a bombing mission over Berlin, Germany, kept a diary and sketches of his life behind the barbed wire fences. Bradley said today's ceremonies brought back memories.
It taught me to appreciate things. You know, hot water, clean clothes. I had one pair of pants I wore for a year. I had 2 T-shirts and 1 pair of shorts. We had a 10-watt light bulb in the center of our room. We had a deck of cards that, after we played, probably were about 6 inches tall from shuffling. Food, freedom. You know, when you put an American behind barbed wire or in solitary confinement, you go against everything that's ever been taught.
Bradley feels Americans care what happened to servicemen that were held captive, but many are not aware of what they went through.
I can remember one march that we were on when it was about 10 degrees below zero, and we were moving along in a column of 4s. There were about 18,000 of us. And men were dying left and right. And every time I get cold, I remember that. You know, that's why I enjoy summertime. I remember that, you know, because there were a lot of men that died during that march that it was a needless death, you might say.
Bradley was one of the lucky ones. He survived and came home to his family. But for thousands of American families whose husbands and brothers are still listed as missing in action in Southeast Asia, all they have is hope that someday they will know, too, what happened to their loved ones. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.